So in this tutorial, I'm just going to distinguish between the primary and secondary market. That is, what are their distinguishing features, and you should know these because these are really important. So again, you can just pause the video and read all these first, and then you will better able to understand what I'm going to explain in this video. So the first distinction is issue of securities. Securities are issued for the first time in primary market, and in secondary markets it deals with all the already issued securities. So this point is quite easy to understand and I don't think I need to explain any further. So let's just move on to second point, that is location. So in primary market there is no fixed location. Primary market deals can happen anywhere in the world. They can take place in a village, city, town, or basically anywhere in the world. But in secondary market, there is a fixed stock exchange. As stock exchange doesn't move from one place to another, and securities or shares are traded from there. So there is a fixed location, and that's usually or most probably is where the financial capital of the country is. Now coming to the third point, transfer. In primary market, usually securities are exchanged in large quantity and surrounds less people than in secondary market. That is, only few institutions and few large investors are related to the transaction. Whereas in secondary market, securities are exchanged between various investors, like one person buys from another and sells it to another one, and they don't know usually each other. So there can be any person in the transaction, and transaction doesn't necessarily have to include some cooperation. So the next point is entry. Well, primary market doesn't require a lot of rules and regulations to issue shares and get the money. Of course, some paperwork or legal work is required, but the process is not that time consuming. But on the other side, when going for the secondary market, you can go through a lot of stuff. Like you have to submit various applications, then regulating agencies reviews those applications. You have to contact merchant bankers, and that one is another time consuming process. And also you have to promote your issue and add this with 100 other activities, and then there is a chance you can get the money. So it's a really time consuming process. Actually, you should again see my IPO tutorial because I have explained all that in details. So coming to some rules and regulations, primary market doesn't require a lot of regulations, as if a startup gets money from venture capitalists, then VCs don't usually tell them to follow hundreds of rules. There's some legal work and then things usually works out. But in secondary market, it's all about the rules, because from the start, like when a company goes public till it gets delisted, the company has to follow various rules consistently, and you can't avoid any single rule, because not following them will bring some consequences with them, and that could include some heavy fine or sometimes prison, and maybe even both. So rules and regulations are quite strict when it comes to secondary market. And now about the last point, that is price movement. So price movement of shares and securities in primary market is influenced by secondary market. For example, if there is a recession in secondary market, then most probably money flow reduces to a great extent, because in recession nobody likes to invest. Nobody usually likes investing in any company, whether it is risky or it has a huge potential, because a lot of people are really scared, and that in turn leads to private investors or angel investors hold back their money and not invest in companies. So secondary market has a major influence on primary market. But when it comes to change in prices of securities in secondary market, then there is not a single factor that affects the secondary market. Like there are micro factor, macro factors, also company specific factors, which leads to change in prices of securities. For example, change in management, slowing down of economy, industry slowdowns, future projections of a company's growth, these all affects the company, and same goes for the economy. So in a nutshell, primary and secondary markets are really different when it comes to how things work, and always you should analyze these factors before choosing where you would like to invest.